Hi, I'm Kiera Boult. I'm an artist and arts administrator, born and raised in Hamilton, Ontario.
I'm Alex Blum. I am an artist and curator, also born and raised in Hamilton.
What is something that needs to change immediately in this city?
Housing.
Yeah.
It's such a dire situation, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it just is, I don't know, I felt like the city was changing so rapidly, and over the pandemic, there's been more folks that are unhoused now. It just, and it feels like the resources aren't there or like what they should be to support those people. So I would say that's the most immediate thing that I would call attention to.
It would be embarrassing and wrong to
To
not
say anything else.
anything else.
Yeah.
The city just makes the situation that we are facing, the crisis that we're facing in the city, is like the most immediate. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I'm happy if art halts in the name of sorting out our housing crisis.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, it's so upsetting. Can you share your favorite memory from your childhood of your time in Hamilton? Or shared memories?
Of, of is being a child.
Yeah.
Like probably my most favorite cherished memory as a child was like going for walks like in the forest and like the woods with like my grandparents.
Aw, that's
It's
nice.
probably my most cherished.
Yeah, I think there's so many for me. My dad used to take me on hikes all the time, and like in Albion Falls and stuff, we'd look for salamanders. That's like a big core memory for me. But then also like growing up on the mountain, like with you and having the escarpment right there.
Yeah.
Like we got into so much trouble.
Yeah, like is it childhood or teenhood?
I don't know.
Okay, because my teenhood memory would be way better.
Okay, say it then.
But I mean, my childhood one is like sweet. But I think that like okay, so at the two memories, it's like childhood, like you got to grow up being around like nature and like feeling
Yeah.
pretty well versed in it. Like I remember being very young and like being able to like navigate through the woods when
Yes.
people got lost that weren't as familiar with like. So I cherished Hamilton memory. And then a teenager is like getting to be an Amy Winehouse drag
Yeah.
at the all ages gay club,
Yeah.
lip syncing to Amy Winehouse is like my most cherished
I was
Hamilton
there.
teen memory. Because you were goody two shoes.
I know.
but also like yeah, I think like having the experience of a larger city that there was like people that were expressing themselves, like people were free enough to express themselves, but you
Yes.
had like the safety of like a mid-sized city that you weren't
That's true.
truly in the same type of danger or there weren't as many people as in a larger one.
Yeah, no, that's true. I always felt safe in Hamilton. Like I felt like no matter where I was, like I could take the bus literally anywhere, and I knew how to find my way back home. I always loved that about Hamilton, and that everything was like pretty accessible. And then like just all my friends, like you could like always find a way to a friend's house. I always loved that about Hamilton, like just being close by to everybody. There's so many memories. I do love this city.
Yeah.
I do love like that. We grew up here. We grew up here together. I just think it's really special. And when I was away, I was living in Guelph for some time. I felt so isolated, but now being back, I'm like, this is a part of my identity. This is a part of my true self. So it's like nice to be back and being a part of like the community again. Oh.
What is the cringiest thing you ever shared on social media?
I haven't shared this, and it's not public, but I know it was like it embarrassed me to my core. I was sitting in front of Shelley Nero's house, and I was early, but we had like a meeting, so I was like just waiting to go inside, and I was like doom scrolling on social media, like just panicking, but not really paying attention to what I was doing. But I guess like I did a deep dive on our friends' social media, like deep dive. And I came across this photo, but I was like, my brain was elsewhere. But I came across this photo and I was like, oh, what a beautiful photo. And our friend is a triplet. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful photo of them as kids. And I'm like, oh, and the caption was like, happy birthday to my siblings. And I was like, oh, wow. I commented, happy birthday. And then I looked at the time and it was 5 years ago. I was like, no. But I just left it.
Yeah.
But I was devastated that I did that. I'm so embarrassed. And yeah, but it's still there. So
Double down.
I mean,
The list is like too long of cringiest
Yeah.
things I've posted on social media.
Yeah.
Like every Real Housewife review that like I can't stop myself from doing. Or like early me trying to be on Twitter, but like
yeah.
I can't like spell the people's names I'm trying to add. And I'm sure there's like
Like, what about like MySpace days? Like now I'm thinking of like,
Oh.
what was our MySpace like and what was our early Facebook days like?
sorry.
Those are probably so embarrassing
I now know
for
the
me as
answer.
well.
The most cringiest thing I've ever posted on social media was my MySpace name. Oh my, pumpkin pie. Hiki loves a goth boy.
I mean, still reigns true, I feel
It
like.
does not. We love the goth community. But that was my first MySpace name.
Oh my God.
And I was intervened on. It was so cringy.
That's hilarious. Who intervened?
For a friend. From a scene friend.
That's amazing. They were like, goth is out? Or they were like,
They were like, you need a new name. It's really embarrassing. You can't go on living like this.
That's amazing.
What is your question?
My question is, who's the most famous person you've met?
Oh.
Yourself.
Probably, well, like, what define met? Truly met, like, or like you had an experience with?
Mine's gonna be an experience because I don't know, you go first.
Okay, Drake.
Didn't you just see him from afar?
Well, that's why I asked if an experience.
Right.
He acknowledged me.
Oh, okay.
But then the most famous person that I actually met, probably Peaches, the singer.
Yeah, that's right.
I love these questions.
They're good questions. For me, I've seen a bunch of celebrities. Because I worked for that celebrity photographer for.
You were paparazzi.
I was paparazzi for a few years, and I've seen a lot of people up close. I don't know. I've seen Leonardo DiCaprio up close, Emma Stone, but maybe like met. Mm-hmm. Wesley Snipes.
Oh my God!
No, yeah, I know. It was a smaller premiere, and yeah, I got to meet him. There was, oh my gosh, I met a ton of people, or I've seen a ton of people. I can't remember how many people I've actually met. So, anyways, I'll say Wesley Snipes.
Must be nice. What is the most important piece of advice you can give to anyone who is thinking of moving to Hamilton?
Yeah, I think like community is like the biggest thing, like finding those people that, uplift you or that make you feel seen, and that you really connect with. I think like that's maybe the biggest thing I would say, because it like, especially in the arts too, like that's what I tell people, like even young artists, like find those people that like understand you, understand your practice, and that like uplift you and you uplift them. So like have that reciprocity, I feel like is really important. I also know how hard it is like to enter a new space. So I don't know, I think maybe just like having gentleness for the journey too, that it'll take time to find those folks, but it'll always happen. Yeah, I don't know.
My advice to someone that's moving or considering moving to Hamilton is like have a good sense of humor. And like I say that because like like having a sense of humor at situations gives a lot of grace. And it's really easy to come to Hamilton and see its bad parts, which like its bad parts are bad. Like it really is stuck in the 80s in every way, except for like market rent. But like to have a sense of humor about the setbacks or like the bad bits of the city, because like the very position of the city really impacts the people that live here. Like people are even like even the most artsy fancy people are like rougher around the edges. Like we all have inherited like a Hamilton sensibility of like not having a lot of patience for passive aggression or those sorts of like there's a Hamilton way that like it can read as like rough or blue collar is what it really is. That like if you're lucky it'll rub off on you. But when first like coming to the city, you should have a sense of humor about like the type of city that happily smokes in parks while they watch their children play.
Yeah. Shamelessly ask for smokes on the street.
You should be uncomfortable with like giving cigs.
Yeah.
But like there is like this history of like like there is like this history that like exists in like really fun campy ways and really dark insidious ways.
Yeah.
And like the best way to deal with both of them is to have like a sense of humor about them and like understand the position that like this city has faced as opposed to another city that maybe hasn't faced economic failure to the degree that post-industrial cities have.
That's a good answer.
Laugh. Oh, your question, sorry.
Can you share a time when you experienced a microaggression?
Like, like yes, but
No, not without outing people.
like I've been like so many microaggressions that I don't even keep stock of them anymore because like have a sense of humor. No, I'm kidding. Do you want to go first while I ponder on a microaggression I've experienced?
I'd also like to pause. Because I can only think of big ones like that involve institutions.
Yeah. Okay. I think like a microaggression I experienced recently was I was at work and I was like organizing books in we have like a library part of that's open to the public. And so I was in there organizing books and somebody came in and they were doing research and then my boss, who is a white man, came in and started talking to the person who was doing research, who they knew each other, and then was like catching up and was like, oh, what's your role at where I work? And he was like, oh, I'm yada yada, which like, and I like chimed in and was like, said something encouraging, like, he runs this ship. And then the person turned to me and said, oh, are you an intern here? And I was like,
oh no.
No, far from it.
Yeah.
Was like a microaggression that I recently experienced that like did make me laugh. Did make me laugh because it was so textbook.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess maybe like I experience a microaggression every time I pull out my tax exempt card when I make a purchase. People either like roll their eyes or they're like huffing and puffing and they're like slamming on like the register to try to like get it to work. that always like makes me feel so bad. Like I feel really small in those moments. So yeah, I would have to say that.
Yeah, that's a fair one.
Yeah, but I've also experienced many, many more, but I shall not say on this program.
Like, honestly, happy to if I remember them, but this long in the game, you just choose to forget.
I know,
awful,
like
and
well,
sure,
that's a
awful
coping
advice. Yeah.
mechanism is to block it out.
Yeah. Safe space for BIPOC artists in Hamilton. Like name a safe space for BIPOC artists in Hamilton.
For me, I would say Blum Collective. I'm a part of the collective, and you know, it's made me feel like family, and like the people that we bring in always feel like family. It's always been like a big community. So I would say Blum Collective, but I'm sure there's like so many other places too that I'm just not thinking of.
Yeah, I would also say Bawadin Collective. Like, but also like, yeah, I would say Bawadin Collective because it is like it. I find that the work that the artists that you work with, like you offer like a really intersectional approach, and like you collaborate who you collaborate with and how you collaborate.
Thanks.
Seems to be it seems to be like a place that is like in a place of yes,
Always.
and
Oh my
like
God.
not grabby or like territorial. That I think is like a totally fair and understandable thing that happens when you try to become like a BIPOC safe space, especially in the city. It ends up making you have to be really defensive and protective.
Right.
But yeah, that is my final answer, which feels like cheating. But
Well, I'll take the compliment.
yeah, and also like it's so hard. It's like BIPOC covers so much where it's like there are spaces that are totally safe and lovely for,
Yeah.
you know, Black people that are not for Indigenous folks or for
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
An unsafe space for BIPOC people in Hamilton.
Well, for me, I'm an artist, so I like immediately think of organizations that have been unsafe.
Yeah.
But there's like lots of unsafe places in Hamilton. At one point, Hamilton had like the largest white supremacy, like right before the pandemic was, had the largest white population of open white supremacists. So, I acknowledge that is Hamilton. But as an artist, like my immediate thought is like organizations that have made me feel unsafe. And I will say, I'm happy to name any names or like get as specific as like needed. But I also don't believe in cancel culture. And my hesitance to actually say an organization's name is like we are currently experiencing a scary amount of austerity in our sector. And my fear is in naming an organization that like I'm fearful of like the consequences of like what that could mean for losing an entire organization that's arts somewhat driven in our city.
Yeah.
But I have empathy for also regional artist run centers, in terms of how the funding is harder, and they have to do a whole lot more, just to be eligible to receive funding. So I'm empathetic to these things, but also for far too long, that has been like an excuse that arts organizations have been allowed to use, to underpay artists, to not pay CARFAC, to do the bare minimum for artists. I, for the most part, as an artist, work outside of Hamilton. be because of like the quality of like support that most centers can like provide. It should be customary for an artist like working to have like proper support in like installing their show,
Right.
or like proper, or like they should have an administrator that's like willing to like advocate to help them
Yes.
find like partnerships or people to help with equipment. That's like what we do as arts administrators is we care and we protect for the artists that come into our spaces.
Yeah.
And like my recent experience in Hamilton was like totally what I expected and prepared for. But yet, like, it's still really shocking and jarring how far behind and how low the standard of how we treat artists and make them feel, and how this, like, attitude is seen in like the next generation of people. So the people that aren't even working in leadership, it's like the people that are working on the front lines with the artists totally have no standard of how you make artists feel. And to me, that feels like that experience had way more to do with just like a disregard for artists than even artists of color. Like honestly, this organization is so neoliberal that like they treat you probably a little bit they at least in the beginning treat you a little bit better because you're of color.
Right.
Um, honestly.
Yeah.
But like really I would say this like I also, not to be too long-winded, but like Hamilton's art sector is like really unsafe for BIPOC people. It like a lot of people like for me and quite a few peers that I like respect had to leave this city
Yeah.
to actually have success.
Yeah.
Because like our aesthetics, our political positions, our like interest in exploring identity was just like not of interest. Like it wasn't even a defensive thing. It was just like not an interest. And like I joke, but it like is probably one of the most tangible and like hurtful parts of this city was like finding love in this city as like a woman of color is so hard and depressing and like honestly has gotten better thanks to gentrification. like but like to me that like grow like to me
Yeah.
that is so like that is like a tangible thing that like no matter how diverse programming appears, no matter how like equitable policies are, like like I said, at the core of this city is like white supremacy
Yeah.
that like bleeds through, and like the only reason that we are currently in the position that we're in is because neoliberalism. So it's not like there's been like this transformative change. There's been like a government mandated politic that now has is now like the lens that all art must be made through. Why you can even why like you even have shows or opportunities in this city. And I would say like the consequences of that are also like leadership failures where like people of color or BIPOC folks are being put in positions of power that they're like also not prepared or supported for, but like for these organizations that are desperate to get funding because it is harder to be a regional center, that we're like putting maybe like shiny BIPOC arts administrator figures, idealized versions of people in positions of power that like cause far more harm for the community and for the person is like another is uh, a thing that I'm seeing in this city that makes me like fearful of. Um, Yeah, I would say in some way, almost every art space is an unsafe place for artists
Yeah.
of color, and then like the far, then like, and then like ones that are more committed to doing way more things than just art are like the most dangerous ones, or have like the opportunity for like the most danger and harm.
Yeah. Just to like echo everything that you're saying. Like, I think for me, like, I totally agree. I think that every arts organization is unsafe. And there's a lot of like insidious things that are happening like just underneath the surface, like, but on the surface they're presenting as like, oh no, our politics are great and we're changing our policies, and no, like we're creating space, but it's still like there's that like insidious nature underneath it all. And I've experienced that in tenfold in several different organizations. And I felt like for me, my practice became relevant when the TRC came out.
Yeah.
And that's when people started noticing my work, because it was like mandated to for it to be seen. And in doing that, like I've been tokenized in so many spaces, and I've been exploited in so many spaces, or like been like the face of, you know, several things where, you know, like it puts me in like a very vulnerable position, like where I have to be like performing out my identity, and it just like feels so gross and so icky. And I've also like benefited from it too at the same time. Like it does pay my bills.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird negotiation that I have, but it's like it is something that like really bothers me, that I'm like, I know that I'm here for a certain reason. It's literally for this organization to like look good, or like for the organization to also benefit from my identity and from the trauma that that I inherited from my family. So yeah, but everything you said is like hitting home for me. And I was also going to say too, like the hospitals are also so unsafe for BIPOC people. My family doesn't feel safe coming into Hamilton to seek healthcare. So they try to do like a lot of things on Six Nations, but the things that they do have to come into Hamilton for, like they're so scared about, or they're like waiting forever, like to have the kids be seen by a doctor or something like that. It just is like, it's not a safe space for racialized people. So I would also say the hospitals.
Yeah.
For me, my favorite alone activity, eating. Love eating by myself and thinking. I love just daydreaming. I don't know about you, but like I put a lot of time into daydreaming. So much better when I process and when I have like a really good meal. So I love doing that by myself and watching my favorite TV shows. It's pretty boring, but
Yeah, I like my favorite alone activity is going for like a walk and then having delusions of grandeur. But I'm happy to do that. I'm just also happy. Am I saying grandeur right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because that would just be like really hard on my ego. Don't touch the mic. Yeah, going for like walks and like having fantasies or daydreaming or thinking, and like also looking at the city and thinking about it is probably my favorite alone activity. And then like binge watching reality TV.
I mean, of course.
Yeah, in the safety of my own home with like far from eyes of judgment.
But then making stories of your critiques of housewives afterwards.
Absolutely. That's what you do. You make art in isolation and then you present it to the world.
There you go. Sometimes I skip it so I can see it all later. Like when I'm laying in bed, that's when I like to watch your stories.
That's sexual.
Yeah, I mean, it's not sexual.
Go see my show at Center 3, Hamilton's My Lady. It's up until the end of July. Thank you for your support.
I have a residency right now at the Art Gallery of Hamilton, and that show will be opening in September, so be there.